Okay, so I'm gonna come over here and we're gonna be doing chapter 3. Now, I'm having a little bit of a hard time with keeping my Zoom on at home. I don't know why, but I am. So I'm gonna try to make this quick. Okay, so here's our learning objectives. Recognize the different ways in which organizations fight fraud, understand the importance of fraud protection, understand how to create a culture of honesty and high ethics, under 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 why hiring the right kind of employee can greatly reduce the reduce blah, 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 blah. Reduce the risk of fraud. Okay. So here we can understand how to assess and mitigate the risk of fraud, the importance of early fraud detection, the understand the different approaches to fraud investigation, and the different options for legal action that can be taken once fraud has occurred. Now I can go back in and we can go look at the ACFE report to the nations. And we make a determination that the longer the fraud continues, of course, the greater the loss to the company can be. One of the things I'm trying to find out, but I'm kind of limited because I'm not in the know anymore. And they are investigating right now, and so the police have said nobody's to be talking. But some of you who may go to Vertical may know that they had their accountant, and I don't know how they did it, which I'm dying to know, which I'm going to try to find out. I might not get to know until maybe next year, whenever this case closes. But $250,000 over the last 5 years. So my husband came home and he told me that, and then some other people from the church also made comments to me. And so I started thinking, $250,000 over the last 5 years, that's $50,000 a year. So if I go into that a little bit further, that's $4,000 a month that person stole. The longer the fraud goes on, the more loss there's going to be. There's more loss, more likely there's going to be collusion, which is going to increase the financial loss as well. So you always got to be really, really careful. If you have it, somebody's going to try to steal it. And so I've made this comment multiple times. If you have it, somebody's going to try to steal it. And you got to protect your assets no matter what. You've always got to be focused in looking at those fixed assets, looking at your assets, period, whether it's cash, fixed assets, inventory, whatever it may be, so that you can protect your company against fraud. Always keep your eye open. Remember the fraud triangle. You've got rationalization, you've got pressure, and you've got opportunity. The only thing that a company can control is reducing the opportunity. Always look for those opportunities that may exist. Things change. They're constantly changing. So you're always going to have to be constantly going back and looking. So keep that in mind. So here we go. Proactive fraud mitigation. Past 2 years was the victim of 3 highly publicized frauds, 22 million from a division manager. That's an overstatement. 11 million purchase of substandard uniforms. And 300,000 inventory theft. It looks like in my opinion, there's a lot of lack of controls here. Because why is this division manager overstating? Why isn't somebody reviewing that? Why didn't somebody check the uniforms coming in? And then the inventory theft, who was doing the controls for that? So this is me saying, okay, wait a second. There is a lot of lack of closing down those opportunities. There's tons of opportunities here. It's pretty willy-nilly. Nobody's following up, nobody's double checking, nobody's protecting the company's assets. So that's something that really needs to start happening. Okay. Yeah. How did I get on 6 so fast? Okay, okay, we got Mark. Okay, here we go. So fraud fighting overview. They're gonna sit here. Okay. There we go. He called an emergency meeting of the key in-house to address, gave staff an unlimited budget and permission to hire outside consultants as needed. That's what you need to do. You need to bring in somebody that knows their, policies and procedures and who can eliminate, those opportunities. Takeaway message, get an effective program that I can report to the board, and let's do it quickly. Okay, so what are they gonna be doing? Most cost effective of all fraud fighting efforts. You got fraud fighting activities, early fraud detection is the second most cost effective way to fight fraud. Totally true. Once fraud is detected, it must be investigated to determine the extent of it. You need to prosecute the person. Do not let that person don't just say, look, we're either gonna terminate you or you're gonna quit. No, 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 no. Because all you're doing is you're setting a problem up for a future employer. Okay, you need to prosecute these people. When they commit fraud, you're not the first time, you won't be the last. Prosecute them. Okay. Okay. Oh, I got him. Oh, you know what? It's 6 o'clock, so that means it's time for me to start looking at my announcements coming in from, what do you call it? From Canvas. Okay. There is no such thing as a small fraud. There's only large frauds that are caught early. 4 elements: fraud prevention, early fraud detection, fraud investigation, and follow-up legal action and resolution. Elements 3 and 4 are the costliest and least effective. So basically what you need to do is you need to always be looking at your fraud prevention and early fraud detection. You need to get that in there so that you can eliminate. Now, people who know that you've got a good program of fraud detection, that you've got good internal controls, they're less likely gonna try to commit fraud against you, okay? They're gonna see that, it's not worth it. It's gotta be something easy. It's gotta be something that they don't have to work too hard at. So that's why we wanna have 1 and 2 covered. Okay. Most cost effective, is to reduce the most cost effective way to reduce losses from fraud. It avoids embarrassment to both victim and perpetrator, eliminates the need for legal action, stolen proceeds, repayment, less expensive than a fraud investigation. Fraud cannot be completely prevented, but its frequency can be reduced. Create a whistleblowing program. Create that program. If you have an anonymous whistleblowing program, you're gonna be able to catch more fraud. People, I think it's 45% are likely to use a whistleblowing program, especially if it is anonymous. So use it, take advantage of that, make it so that your employees feel vested in the business and they take a responsibility for the fraud or lack of fraud. Here we go. 5 elements of a culture of honesty and high ethics. Making sure that top management models appropriate behavior, hiring the right kind of employees. This is so true. I have done this before. I don't sit on any hiring committees because it just, I don't want to do it. But when I have done it, I'm the one that goes over and looks up their Facebook accounts, looks them up on public access to court information. I'm, especially if it's an accounting position, I'm going to hold them to a different set of standards. And my standards are pretty high because I don't want to hire anybody that may or may not commit fraud. I'm going to look for people who I can trust that don't have any questionable backgrounds. I've seen cases where people, they have hired people who may have criminal convictions, whether it's drug or theft or maybe even bad checks. And I know they made comments to me because I say, oh, I wouldn't have hired that person. And they're like, well, they've done their time. No, I still wouldn't have done it because the likelihood that somebody is going to, I mean, granted, I hope it's the case, but I can't trust anybody to have already committed some type of criminal activity in certain areas because they're more likely to commit fraud in the future. Communicating, oh, and this sounds mean, but it doesn't, I mean, I know it sounds really mean of me, but my job isn't to be friends with everybody. My job is to protect the company. And if that means that I don't hire certain people because I can't trust that they are going to follow our ethics, then so be it. That's just all there is to it. I can't say anything more. Okay, create a positive work environment, making sure everybody knows their expectations about the policies and procedures. Again, maintain effective policies and procedures. Okay, tone at the top. Make sure that it starts at the top. If your top people believe in ethics and morals and they're promoting those ethics and morals instead of just blowing it off, then you're more than likely your people down below in lower levels are going to be promoting the same ethics and morals as well. When you start at the top, it just trickles down, okay? It's just gonna trickle down and it's just gonna go the way you want it to go. And that's kind of all I got to say. If you behave ethically as management at the very top of everything, you're gonna have employees that are going to behave ethically and promote ethics and transparency. But you've got to start it at the top. It can't come from the bottom. It's got to come from the top. Because if the top cares, then your lower level employees are going to care. If your top level cares about your lower level employees and making sure they're taken care of and their needs are met, those employees are going to give you 110%. So you've always got to have a good steward attitude when it comes to your employees. Not only are you taking care of them in the workplace, you're making sure that you're meeting their needs outside of the workplace as well. That's just something you've got to do to maintain your employees. If you have employees that feel that they are valued, they're going to give you everything they've got to give you. Okay? If you treat your employees like crap, they're going to leave you as soon as they can. As soon as they can find somebody that takes better care of them, they're going to leave you. So try not to do that, okay? I know I'm wiggling in my chair right now. You guys are gonna have to forgive me. Okay, here we go. Hiring the right kind of employees. Do your background checks. I remember okay, I'm old school. So what I remember is most of our employees that would come in and be hired, they would have to come into the office and we'd have to interview them face to face. Well, this is a long time ago. I was on a hiring committee and the goofiest thing happened. Um, we meet this person and they're being hired for a certain job. And I was like, wow, this person seems like a really interesting person. You know, I think they're going to be a great asset to the company. Well, the person who interviewed, because it was all online, and the person who showed up for the job appeared to be two different people, literally. And so sitting there and I'm meeting this person and I'm like, this is not the person, this is not who they look like. When I remember when they interviewed, they looked really nice. They had on nice shirt, nice slacks, combed, well presented, and the person that showed up was not the same person. Anyhow, come to find out, we think that what had happened is because of the fact that it was Zoom and it's hard to tell when you're looking at somebody from across the screen, we think that they had their buddy interview and and they just, those people weren't really a good person. And I think if we would have seen some of the background checks on them, we could have stopped that person from being hired. Cause they really weren't ready for the job and they weren't up to par. So just to put it nicely, they were not a good choice. And we ended up finding that out pretty quick. Again, you can't hide it when somebody shows up and they're faking it. You can't hide it for long. Check your references, properly interpret responses to inquiries regarding candidates. Um, there's certain questions you can ask, and I joked around about this, I will ask questions. And if I get a very generic no turn down, I know there's ways of not saying anything, which tells you the most. Okay. I know I've had people call up, and this is well before, long before working here at the college. I've had people come call up and they'd ask for references. And when I gave a very generic reference with pretty much not giving them any information whatsoever, if the person could read me, and most of the time they can, when they tell you nothing, and if they're not eligible for rehire, that's not somebody that's not somebody you want to hire, okay? And make sure you test for honesty. Um, double check all of those things. I got a puppy that's getting into all my stuff. She is just rotten. She wants to play. And she keeps pulling out all my napkins, trying to get me to play. Anyhow, okay. I'll give you another example. So I was in charge of, there was a couple of us, and we were in charge of hiring an executive assistant for a boss. And this was number of years ago, 20 some, maybe 30 years ago. And I remember this lady came in and she interviewed so well. I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be perfect for the job. Yay, she's gonna be a great fit. Well, what we found out is she's really great at interviewing. Because when so when she got here, she did everything she possibly could to pretend like she didn't know anything. And she was the worst employee because all she did was create problems and basically, it sounds really bad, but she played the men off of each other, trying to get them to do her work. And so went on a conference with her, and she was married, and she was trying to hook up with somebody at the conference. And the big boss saw it, and he was not impressed with her. And I was not impressed with her. Then when we told her that it wasn't working out, we went back on her computer and we found that she had been applying for jobs in areas of expertise that were the CEO's level of expertise. She had no clue how to do this stuff, but she was applying for these jobs as a CEO position, saying she was doing all this really specific work. And she hadn't she hadn't even typed anything out in reference to it, because she tell everybody she didn't know how to work the computer. Anyhow, make sure you pay attention and you get people in there who are worthy. Just like, what was it? It's not Beavis and no, it's not Bill and Ted. I want to say Wayland's World or something, where the one dude's, this is a long time ago, when they go, you're not worthy, you're not worthy. Anyhow, okay, here we go. Here's an ethical maturity model. You can tell I'm not very mature right now when I'm starting to think about the goofy dude who played gosh, I can't even remember his name now. He played Shrek, and then Dana Carvey. And I want to say they were, I don't know, they were rock and roll dudes, and they would, you're not worthy, There we go. I'm not mature right now. Okay, ethical leadership, helping others to become ethical, ethical courage, willingness to pay the price for ethics. You got to be willing to do it. Application of ethics to business situations, personal ethical understanding. Now, all of this is really hard, and and I'm going to tell you, sometimes it can be very difficult to hold yourself up to this, but it is important. Everybody can hold themselves up to this. I've had to, in cases where it involved my family members, where I had to take a step back and say, this is unethical and I won't be involved in this. And I would take a step back and I would hold them accountable. And so I know it's hard to do that, but you always have got to be thinking, who's looking over my shoulder? Do the right thing. Always do the right thing. And when you put it in your head to always do the right thing, it becomes easier and easier. And it doesn't matter who's looking over your shoulder, because it's just your normal behavior from then on out. Okay, challenges to ethical decision making. The translation of personal ethics, level 1 to business or financial settings, level 2 is difficult for many people. I have a hard time with this, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's because of my black heart in accounting. Okay, now I really can, and I've mentioned this before, and you guys probably wouldn't believe it to see me in the classroom, but I have an ability to take and remove my conscience from the problem and solve the problem without putting any emotions into it whatsoever. That can be a positive and it can be a negative. So it's always good for me to have somebody else who has a different perspective to join me, because in my mind, I'm going to be thinking totally black and white. These are the ethics. This is what you've got to do. And whereas somebody else may be thinking in terms of human resources, this is what we need to do. And somebody else is thinking about, well, this is performance level. This is what we need to do. You can have those ethics, but you've got to be able to surround yourself with people like minds, and having the policies and procedures there helps provide the guidance to keep you on track, where you don't have to make a subjective decision. Subjective meaning where you come up with your own opinion as to how it should be handled. Like, see, my opinion now is I'm getting really tired of all our restaurants closing down in Yuma. And I'm thinking somebody needs to open Red Lobster up again. Because I'm really missing the coconut shrimp. Okay. Okay. There are, you know what, I don't agree with this. Few individuals have the courage to stand up for ethical beliefs when personal consequences for doing so are perceived as high. That's not true. I look at, okay, so I've had to make some choices, and it involves people I know, and I had to stand up. I had to stand up for what I thought was right. And my choice was centered around, how could I not make this ethical choice? If I didn't make this ethical choice and people found out, then it would cause them to lose faith in me. So I always have to make the utmost ethical decision, because I want people to have faith in me and believe in me, especially when I'm teaching fraud. Okay, distribution of employee honesty. Most organizations, employees fall into 3 groups regarding honesty. And I heard somebody say it one time. And it was the other day, 30% are fraudulent, 70%, I don't know. They said something like 30% are totally honest, 30% are totally dishonest, and then there's a bunch of people in between that it depends on how they handle things. Well, I don't think it has to be like that. Okay, so group 1 is honest regardless of the circumstances. Group 2 is dishonest whenever it benefits them. That'd be a sociopath, psychopath. And then group 3 is honest depending on their situation and environment. Group 3, the swing group, represents the majority of employees, highly influenced by the organization structure and culture, likely to be honest when companies have strong ethical leaderships. Okay, again, If I always behave a certain way, my employees are gonna follow pursuit. And so here's the swing group. Here's the honest employees, who's gonna be like that no matter what, dishonest. And then these people could go either way. Okay. Which of the following fraud mitigation strategy is likely to be the most effective and efficient? Expedite termination for fraud perpetrators, create a new department to confidentially investigate suspected fraud, institute a company-wide ethics awareness program, including both expectations and consequences. Okay. Let's find out which one they're gonna say is gonna be the best. So put it in your head, which one do you think it is? And let's find out. So this one here, even though I do think you should still terminate them and you should prosecute them, but it's not the best choice in order to prevent fraud. Um, Here they're saying let's investigate fraud. Well, it's going to be a little bit more costly, whereas this one here, where we promote our ethics program and make everybody well known of it, that is going to be your most cost effective. It's going to be your least, it's going to be your most affordable method. Okay. Poor hiring example, consulting firm PCA hired John Nelson as a director of finance for their 3 New Brussels office. He had an impressive resume and a strong reference from a previous employer. That doesn't mean crap. Nelson could not perform properly in his new position and made the excuse of personal illness. After 3 years, the business shows signs of distress, with stock falling $20 a share to $12 per share. Wow, that's quite a bit. Fraud uncovered when a PCA bank account that should have had over $1 million had inadequate funds to cover a $500,000 transfer. Okay, so we got a problem here. It's like, Houston, we have a problem. It's actually Brussels. Okay, this is what we revealed. His real name was Robert Luzeski. He did not have a CPA or other credentials. His references were fake, fabricated by his spouse, was previously fired from a bank for embezzling $400,000. He used a dummy corporation to divert over almost $1 million. 3 steps to communicate expectations of honesty and integrity. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys, I think this happens more often than not. The one place that fired him, they should have prosecuted him so that it would have been on his record. And so if they would have done the proper background check, they would have seen it and they wouldn't have hired him. Okay, I really, really am under the strong impression that this is what happened to AEA when they hired that one man who stole all that money from AEA. I really, really think that somebody had terminated him for cause and they didn't prosecute him, sent him on his way. He found another job, came over here and stole money from AEA. So I don't think AEA was his first time. That's just my opinion, my own personal opinion. Okay. So our 3 steps to communicate expectations: identify and codify appropriate values and ethics, institute fraud awareness training that helps employees understand potential fraud problems and how to report or resolve them. The best whistleblowing program is an anonymous whistleblowing program, probably like a telephone, or you can report it over the telephone, or you can report it over email, or some type of survey monster kind of deal, and get that out there. And that way people can double check on it, and it prevents some retaliation. Okay, communicate consistent expectations about punishment of violators. Okay. Ethics communications, publish your code of ethics. Make sure people sign them stating that this is what's going on. Clear statements from management regarding consequences of dishonesty, including termination and prosecution. Under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, you have to have the code of conduct with your expectations. So that's put into your legislation. Okay, this one is so true. Fraud occurs less frequently when employees are happy where they're working. When I am happy where I'm working, I am all into my job and I'm doing everything I possibly can just to be happy in my job, and I can't wait to get to work. So I'm going to be less likely to commit fraud. Factors that detract, top man does not, okay. Factors that detract, so you got management doesn't care about how they behave, negative feedback, perceived inequities, autocratic rather than participative management, so that means micromanagers, low organizational loyalty, unreasonable budget expectations, or just period budget, any type of expectations, unrealistically low pay, poor training and promotion opportunities, high turnover and or absenteeism. Okay. No matter how good you've got it going on, sometimes it's going to happen. So how you react is going to determine, the likelihood of potential future fraud. You want to thoroughly investigate the facts, take firm and consistent actions against your perpetrators, assess and improve fraud controls. Always, always, always be on the lookout, because if you have it, somebody's going to try to steal it. As soon as I could figure out one way they were trying to steal it, I had to turn around and look another way because there was another way they're trying to steal. It's just, it is what it is. You've got to always be on you've always got to be on your best, not best behavior. You always got to be on your toes looking out for the fraud. Provide communication and training to prevent future fraud. Okay. Here we go. Okay, how can we eliminate the fraud opportunities? Accurately identify sources and measure risk. Implement appropriate preventative and detective controls to mitigate those risks. Create widespread monitoring by employees. Retain both internal and external auditors who provide independent checks on performances. Okay, where are the greatest frauds going to be at? Is it going to be your warehouse where you've got all your merchandise at? And is that where it's going to be? Is it going to be your cash register? I think I made a comment one time, and I can't remember if I made it to you guys or if I made it to somebody else. I was working in retail and I went up to go get something from one of the cashiers. So I'm in a back office, and so I walk out and I see no cashiers on the floor. So I walk up to the cash register and I hit a button and it pops open. Should not have popped open. It should have been locked down. And so what does this grumpy old lady do? She goes and I take the till out of the register and I go lock it up in a safe. Because where's my cashier at? Why did she leave the register open? Yeah, that's that's the 3-year-old husky. The pug that we're fostering has the ball that she wants in the hand and he's squeezing it. And now she's decided she wants the ball because she wants to tear it apart. Nope, she found it. Now she's got it. She's like, too bad, so sad, it's mine now. He's gonna go down and he'll find something else to chew on. But yeah, now you got some of that in there. So always, you got to figure out, like this one time, I realized this one young lady was stealing money from the register. She was doing it by coupons, so I took the coupons away. What did she do? She went out and she found some other type of coupon to try to be sneaky with. So I ended up having to terminate her because I actually got that one on video. But I always got to be watching. You've got to be watching to see what kind of sneakiness is going to happen. And you've just got to follow through, and you got to hold people accountable. Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. It's broken into 4 sections, but mainly you've got the requirements to have audits, both financial and internal control audits. you have got to have an external auditor with with an arm's length distance between yourselves. And there's criminal penalties if you are falsifying your financial statements. Okay, and this all happened because of they say Enron, it wasn't just Enron. There was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies that committed financial statement fraud. And so Enron happened to be the biggest one, but they weren't the only one. So this all happened in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Okay, so we're gonna have a knowledge check here. Suppose you're a fraud perpetrator. Ooh, stealing approximately, I stole $10,000 per month. During your work shift, of the following persons, which one would be the most likely to detect your fraud? Explain your rationale. An external consultant, your coworkers or supervisor, your company's accounting department, your company's chief financial officer. So which one do you think is going to be the person who's gonna catch you? Well, I mean, I can make arguments for every single one of these, but I'm gonna tell you, your coworker or your supervisor, because they're the ones that deal with you day to day, and they're gonna be looking at your behaviors and your deceitfulness, okay? They're gonna be able to see it. And so that's why I'm always gonna say it's gonna be your coworker or supervisor. An external consultant, I can hide anything from an external consultant because they're only gonna see what I want them to see. My company's accounting department, if I know what I'm doing, I'm good at hiding it. The chief financial officer doesn't even get down and dirty. They're gonna be expecting somebody else lower level from them to discover the fraud. Okay, so they picked the same thing I picked. Okay, so here we go. Most fraud perpetrators start by stealing small amounts. They steal larger amounts as they become confident that they will not be caught. Some people just do it just to see if they can do it. If fraud perpetrators are up in upper management, they're less likely to be caught. So detection does not include investigation or legal actions. Begins by identifying red flags that tend to be associated with fraud. Okay, let me put this on hold for a sec. Give me 1 sec while I turn off my recording. I am making, are you okay?
Yes, I'm yawning.
Oh. Okay, so let's keep going in here. Again, we mentioned this, detection does not include investigation or legal actions. This is just trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, always need to find the red flags. One of the things I wanted to mention here, and those of you who've had me in financial accounting have heard this story once before, but I'm going to say it again. So there was the chick up at the San Francisco Giants. She was the payroll supervisor. She was being paid approximately $75,000 a year. She ended up stealing over $2 million, I want to say, with the San Francisco Giants. Well, there was lots of red flags. She was living well without her means. She was taking her staff onto vacations. They were doing all kinds of funny stuff like that. She paid for somebody's remodel of their kitchen. She bought a bunch of furniture for somebody. She paid somebody else's credit card bills off. Those are some big red flags. Okay, I'm going to come over here. Okay, so I found it because I just had to find it. So this happened in 20 okay, she went to prison for a year and 9 months. She stole 2.2 million from 2010 to 2011. Says she was there from 2007 to 2011. Yeah, over 40 employees. Something about how sneaky she was. All the things that anyhow, so you guys can go and find this out if you wanted to. But, yeah, they don't have a picture of her in here. But anyhow, so there you go, it was in 2010, so it was 15 years ago when she committed this fraud. But here's the thing is that, yeah, no, I'm getting all kinds of stuff, is that she knew about her employees knew that she was committing the fraud because they were benefiting from the fraud as well. Okay, that's my point. The primary ways fraud can be detected is chance, you got whistleblowing, and then auditing, internal audits and external audits. Okay, the San Francisco Giants was just by chance because she wasn't found out by the San Francisco Giants. She was found out by the bank she was applying a loan from. And they had questions for human resources because they had this human resources document and it said A, B, C, D. So they had questions, so they contacted HR to find out what A, B, and D meant. And HR had no clue what they were talking about, and that's how the fraud was determined. So, it doesn't always get reported, just right off the bat. Some people are just really good. So again, what you need to do is you need to have a good whistleblowing system set up. You need to have a good, many, many moons ago when I first started working on it, AWC, I read an article that says, most people were afraid to whistleblow because they were afraid for repercussions from their fellow employees as well as their bosses. But you need to have a good, whistleblowing program. Okay, so let me keep going. Install a fraud reporting hotline, like I just said, whistleblowing. If people know that there's a chance they can get caught, they're less likely. I watched this was about a sociopath, psychopath, and it was this man and he committed frauds against people. And he ended up going to prison. He got caught and he ended up going to prison, and now he is been crime free. And they asked him, why aren't you committing crimes anymore? And he says, I would be if I thought I could get away with it. The only thing that was keeping him out of committing even more crimes was the fact that he was afraid of going to prison again. So, something to kind of think about there. Okay. Analyze data and look for indicators of fraud. Look for the red flags, the missing invoice numbers, the missing check numbers, the missing documentation needed for approvals. Look for those things. Look for behavior in your numbers that are not typical. When you see revenue increase, you should also see accounts receivable increase, vice versa. So if you see something behaving odd there, maybe there's some fraud that's happening. You need to go in and double check. Fraud investigation. Let's see. Look for those red flags. Always look for those red flags. Those red flags are really interesting. Like spending beyond your means, living beyond your means, spending money like you won the lottery when you haven't won the lottery. I keep trying to do that and it just doesn't work out. I gotta win. I gotta play first before I can win. Approaches to fraud investigation. You need to do it nice and quiet. You can't go out and just say, hey, you can't let your management team know you're going to be up to something, because one of them will narc. Was at an employer one time, and this one woman, we found out she was one of her managers, and she really didn't know what she was doing. It's like you ask her to make, eggs over medium, and then she made scrambled eggs. Okay. So, I mean, it was really bad. She just didn't know what she was doing, and she didn't know how to do it, and she didn't know how to manage it. Even though she said she did, it was a lie. Well, the big boss told another one of the executive management teams. Now, I was part of the executive management team, but fortunately for me, I keep my nose out of things so that I don't get in the drama. There's another one, keep your nose out of stuff so you're out of the drama. So anyhow, I had no clue that she was getting ready to be terminated. Then all of a sudden I see her do something and I hear about all of our software, our property management software, got all mangled up because she changed the passwords and she changed a bunch of the security questions so nobody could get back into this software package that we had to have. And, um, and then all of a sudden I see her leave, I see two other people leave, and then I see another one of our management team leave. Well, come to find out that that other management person, they went and told her she was getting ready to be terminated. And that gave her the time to go and mess up all of our software packages. So she really just threw us under the bus there, and we had to try to recover that. And then she turned around and told two other employees that they were getting ready to be terminated too, along with her. And that was a total lie. Keep things quiet. Don't be talking about it, because what happens is people will try to hide evidence, destroy evidence. They will try to sabotage the company. Okay. Okay, so here's 4 types of fraud investigation. You got your testimony, you got your documentation, physical and personal. Okay? So you got those 4 things going on. That's your evidence square. And so you can, this right here is the fraud triangle. If you turn around and you add capability to this, you'll have the fraud diamond, but this is the fraud triangle, okay? Investigate based on the necessary elements of fraud, the theft act, the concealment, the conversion. Okay, you can see that. Here's the fraud element. And there's the fraud motivation triangle. Now, there's all kinds of different fraud theories out there. There's mice, there is score, there is fraud pentagon, fraud diamond, fraud triangle. You got white collar crime. You've got the fraud scale, so on and so forth. You can see there's a lot of different fraud theories out there. It doesn't matter which one you use, just as long as you use one. Now, steps for conducting the fraud. Actions must only be taken to establish the truth. Don't try to be subjective. Just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Individuals conducting the investigation must be experienced, objective, and avoid jumping to conclusions. Hypotheses of investigators regarding culpability must be closely guarded when discussing the progress. Ensure that only those who have need to know are kept apprised of the investigation activities and techniques. Okay. Ensure that all information gathered during the investigation is independently corroborated and factually correct. Investigators should restrict investigation techniques to those that are scientifically and legally sound and fair. Should report all facts objectively and fairly. So most organization and fraud victims make one of 3 choices: pursue no legal action, pursue civil remedies, or pursue criminal. I think this one should be done for everybody. Victim organizations pursue legal action against perpetrators in less than half of the fraud cases. And so that's what allows them to go and find another employer and steal from somebody else. The product development director of a manufacturing firm committed fraud by granting a particular vendor an exclusive sourcing agreement in return for kickbacks. Fraud costs the company a significant portion of its annual profit, which the following actions would be most likely to prevent a recurrence of this type of fraud in the future. Demote the perpetrator and transfer them to a different department. I don't know if I would do that. Might even just terminate them. Quietly terminate the perpetrator to avoid bad publicity. Prosecute the perpetrator and use the fraud event as a part of a future company-wide prevention and education. This would be me. However, a lot of companies probably would do number 2. Okay. This one is hard to do. A lot of companies don't want the publicity. They'll do this one. Okay, civil actions, civil actions. Remember, there's 2 types of, there's criminal and there's civil. Criminal is beyond a reasonable doubt, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And civil is the preponderance of evidence, okay, which means you have more evidence that you've committed the whatever happened, the offense, versus you didn't commit the offense. Okay, so that's why I prefer criminal actions, but civil actions, you can get paid back, you can ask for some type of punishment in terms of financial dollars for committing the crime. Here's the criminal, must have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Self-assessment. You guys can do that on your own. And there's my summary. Woohoo! And if I have this up right, hang on. There we go. Now I'm done.